I mean, I may know which way to go, but even better than that, I know 50 ways not to go.
Hello, beautiful people, light keepers and trailblazers. It's Michele Phillips with this week's episode of Write Your Outcome. Today I have with me Sarah Olivieri. I'm saying it wrong. Say it right.
Olivieri.
Olivieri. What a beautiful name. I have to do it justice. Sarah Olivieri. And welcome, Sarah, to Write Your Outcome.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I love everything about outcomes. So I was like, this is going to be the perfect place for us to hang out.
Yes, it is going to be the perfect place because I've read a little bit about you. She's in New York. We're both in New York, so it's kind of nice. I am going to read a little bit of her background because I always like to give my guests their full justice. So let me read a little bit about her, and then we're going to dive in. So Sarah has been called a business alchemist. I love the word alchemist right out of the gate. So beautiful. Sarah has been called a business alchemist in the nonprofit space. Others have called her, quote, the money. She's the wizard behind the curtain who has orchestrated the transformation of nonprofit organizations from failing to thriving, which never fails to make the jaws drop for nonprofit business experts. As the former director of 3 nonprofits and the founder of 5 for-profit businesses, she understands deeply the challenges and complexities facing organizations. Sarah, who is also an international best-selling author, globally renowned speaker, is the creator of the Impact Method, a framework she designed and built from the ground up to help organizations simplify their operations, build aligned teams, and make a bigger impact without getting overwhelmed or burning out. Her company, Pivot Ground, supports nonprofits to become financially sustainable world changers, and she has an incredible 100% success rate. I love that. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Oh, it's hearing your own bio is always like, oh my God.
Is that me?
Is that me? And yet we've had so many lives as whole people. It's like so much, and yet just scratches the surface every time.
Yeah. So again, we have so much time here. We're going to dive into what's important to you. So as the theme of the show is Write Your Outcome. You're helping nonprofits write their outcomes and write better outcomes financially. But talk about your own outcome. Like, what was the journey that led you into doing this?
Yeah. There was a big pivot for me 10 years ago now, when it was all connected to wanting to build a business that really was much more intentionally mine. And I was decided in that same moment to leave my husband. My son was 2 at the time. And so there was it was this moment of, I was growing in business. I'd already founded a nonprofit. I'd already helped my now ex-husband start a video production company, as well as a cafe and art supply store. And I had, I had been building my own kind of web development marketing company. And I'd done all those things and still didn't call myself an entrepreneur, but I was like getting close to that year that I would say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur and feeling like I had done so much for other visionary leaders and hadn't really been that for myself. And I started envisioning a life for myself and my son that was really not in alignment with what my husband at the time was wanting. And, you don't decide to get divorced lightly, especially if you have a child, because it's going to profoundly impact their life. But I reached a point, I remember thinking about, I was just really unhappy. I remember leaning my head against the cold wall, just, being like, oh, this is not what I want. I'm not happy. This isn't my life. But I could feel like a more successful business calling to me. I remember my desk kept getting shrunk. Like I kept getting shoved in a little corner, a smaller and smaller corner.
You mean where you were living with your husband?
Yeah. Literally I had made a desk for myself at home. And then he was like, I can't run the cafe and art supply store by myself. I need you to come help me. So I moved my desk into the back corner of the store and then literally ran my business and those kind of two businesses in one all by myself, no problem. And then it was like, oh, I need the space that you're in the store. So then we moved at that time, and I moved to our new apartment where I now didn't even have my own room. I just had like a corner of the living room and got an even smaller desk so it would fit in there. So like literally.
I feel like the saying, the writing was on the wall, but nobody was willing to say it out loud.
That's right. So but meanwhile, while my physical space was getting smaller, I was making all the money for both of us, and our son. And so like there was like this little spark at that little desk of like, grow. So I signed up, to do a business boot camp. And I remember being like, we were really poor at the time, and it was going to like max out our last credit card. I was like, I guess I better ask my husband before I do that. So we waited for him to come home, and he came home and he was like, I started to ask him about it. He's like, I already don't even know what you're talking about, and walked away. And I was just like, boop, purchase.
This is happening.
This is happening. And I think it was a couple days later, I was like, we have to get divorced. Like, I'm leaving. And I set out like to start building something new. So I'm like in this boot camp. I had moved into my friend's little guest room and then to another friend's like attic. My little desk is like moving around with me. And right, you've been there? Okay. Yeah. So, and then I had this moment kind of like, sometimes pivots aren't like one moment, right? And the second really important moment happened, right? I decided to change, but then it was like, how exactly am I going to change? So, I was in divorce mediation. Best thing ever. Anybody who's like out there, like getting divorced or thinking about getting divorced, like try the mediation route. It's a thing. And the mediator just sent us home with homework, right? Like, here's a sample calendar, like write out what you'd like your parenting schedule to be. And in that same week, the lesson in business boot camp was you have to ultimately build a team and be really intentional about where you're spending your own time in your business. And so I was like, let me just like put these two things together. So I put in my dream schedule with my son, and then I reverse engineered how many hours do I have left to work? And I remember it was like 28 hours one week and 31 hours the next week. And I was like, okay, how do I build the business that meets like my financial goals, but also these time goals? So that set out a building phase that was really about intention. And there was never a moment, hustling wasn't an option. I had to be intentional about my time because I was committed to, being a mom. I had a little kid who really needed a lot of mom time back then.
And when does the nonprofit cross into here? Like, were you working in a nonprofit also while being in the cafe and doing the business,
Yeah. So I had been working at nonprofits. I wasn't at that moment, although my clients, in the business boot camp, they're like, you have to find a niche, right, to specialize in. And I was like, oh no, who's it going to be? But then it turned out all my best clients were nonprofits because I knew how to run them, not just market for them. And so I was able to serve them in a way that I wasn't, was more than I could other clients. And so I started really working with nonprofits. And that took me down a different, more pivots into the future, because nonprofits struggle to benefit from great marketing because they often don't run very consistently or smoothly. And that eventually led me to at the time I was doing marketing and websites for nonprofits. And that kind of led me into helping nonprofits run better because I was like, I can't sell them marketing that they can't really use well. But here was this thing that they really needed, how to run well, that I knew how to do really well.
I love it. So you're writing your outcome on all these multiple levels, right? Writing your outcome for your son, for your own life, for your business, starting a new business. I love how you backed into it, which not a lot of people do with, I need this amount of money, but I only have this amount of time. So what does that look like? And then, on your website, you have a lot of great, and I think, I've worked with some nonprofits in the past, and it's always the board and they don't get along, and, they work against each other, and, they're raising money. So, talk about the impact method. Is that what this is, helping boards?
The impact method is actually mostly with the CEOs and the leadership teams, although it takes things that were traditionally in boards' hands and takes it out of their hands. So it includes iterative strategic planning, and it takes it out of the board's hands. So in the impact method, we do strategic planning every 2 months. We move the strategy along, and there's a system for gathering information between the 2-month periods, for gathering information throughout the organization. But then the leadership team decides on the strategic goals, and the board doesn't. And traditionally, boards create strategic plans in the nonprofit space.
And do they create more work when they're doing that usually for the people?
It adds a lot of work. I mean, it's hard. Like, part of the decision to take it out of the board's hands was board members are part-time volunteers at nonprofits. They're not in the day-to-day to have that information at their fingertips like the leadership already are. So why are we going to spend all this time trying to get them to know information that the leadership team already knows? Yeah. And then so I'm a big believer in, if you're going to make a decision about an outcome, you better have skin in the game, meaning you better be impacted by the consequences of your own decision.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
So board members really don't have much skin in the game, especially in a nonprofit.
It's so easy to make decisions for other people when you don't have skin in the game. Yeah.
But they're not even financially really invested, right? They don't lose money when they make a bad decision. And at least a for-profit board, typically board members have, stock, they have shares, and they'll lose money if they.
I love that. And I also love at the beginning when you've been called the business alchemist. So, we think of businesses, we think of nonprofits, but a nonprofit doesn't mean they're not allowed to make money so talk about the alchemy part and what you bring to the table for these nonprofits.
Yeah, I think, that part of me is very much, if somebody didn't say I can't, if it's not against the law, I feel like it's an option.
Yeah. So open to everything.
Open to everything. And I don't feel constrained by shoulds or we've always done it that way. In fact, whenever I hear a should or we've always done it that way, I think that's not an outcome-driven approach. I'm all about getting the result and
working it backwards, just like you did with your life.
Yeah. And sometimes that means taking a traditional tried and true approach. And sometimes that means taking a completely out of the box, non-traditional approach. And usually when I hear that should, it's a disconnect. It's about doing something the same way, regardless of whether or not it's getting a good result.
Oh, comfort. Is it part of comfort zone? And
yeah. Kind of so I think sometimes that kind of alchemy, it does feel like magic when you take an outcome that feels far away and then you find that path nobody thought of. That's like a shortcut. It's actually we can be there. That's not like a 10-year away thing. That's like a 1-year away thing.
Yeah. I love the word alchemy, and it goes into write your outcome, because I always say, I use the example of it's Thanksgiving next week. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, this will probably air after Thanksgiving. I know it will, but it's being recorded the week before Thanksgiving. And a lot of people are going to spend a lot of time setting the table and putting out nice dinnerware and flowers or whatever. And they're laying this groundwork for a beautiful event before anyone arrives. So to me, writing your outcome or the alchemy is, what's the outcome? You're creating this beautiful vision or outcome, and then you're working yourself into it. And then your brain turns on neurons and circuits that, now here's an idea to get us there, versus if you're stuck in the comfort zone.
Yeah, 100%. And on top of that, I love that example you used of the Thanksgiving table. So often I work with organizations and I'm helping them internally clean up and set the table, if you will, and making the table really nice. And then there's this magic alchemy piece where they're not running any specifically new fundraising activity. They're not reaching out but money just starts coming in.
Interesting.
New checks come in the mail. I've had clients get grants they didn't apply for. The money. And I think what happens is, right, when our mindset starts to go into like proactive mode, intention mode, it radiates an energy of confidence and clarity out into the world. And when you radiate that out into the world, I believe that the trust factor of what people feel about you goes way up. And when they trust you, then they start, if you're a nonprofit, they start sending you money.
And it works. And people, believe me or not believe me, I'm totally 100% there with you. There's an old story called The Rabbi's Gift. Mm-hmm. It's an old fable, and it talks about this monastery or whatever that's nobody's coming to anymore. But then as each of the rabbis starts thinking that they might be the Messiah, like, what if it's you? They all start acting differently, then people automatically start coming back. I'm really shortening the tale. It's really beautiful. So look it up, The Rabbi's Gift. And maybe it was I can't remember. But anyway, it's a beautiful story about saying like your emotions and your energy is communicating without you saying a word. So when an organization is getting these good ideas, they're getting re-energized is what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
So their re-energization, if that's a word, then all of a sudden they get this grant or they get this check from a donor because they go, wow, what's going on over there? It's almost like you feel it and then they want to support you. Yeah. So when you come into these nonprofits, are they hiring you, I'm assuming, as a consultant to come in and say, look at what we have going and help us improve?
Yeah, it's like a hybrid of coaching and training and some done for you. And, that's evolved over the years from, early on in marketing, I learned the problems with consulting. And I kind of define consulting as like, you come in, you evaluate what's going on, you create a proposed solution, a plan for them, and you give them the plan for them to execute. And that, like, anyone who's ever tried that, knows that doesn't really, it's not an effective change mechanism, because my plans are generated from my brain, and it's really hard for somebody else without my brain to just implement the plan that came out of my head. Okay. So I think really to make great plans, it has to be a collaborative process. Everybody has to have not just buy-in, but actually have like put stuff into it, right? It has to be everybody's plan. It's part of that skin in the game piece, right? Like an outside consultant gives you a plan. They don't have skin in the game. Or if they do, they're probably going to give you a better plan. So we have that piece of like, that's where I love like coaching, training, kind of doing together, right? So to me, that's the most effective way to bring change. Like, I'm going to help you come up with the plan. I'm going to give you some of my own brain to like boost you along the way, because I am an expert and more. I mean, I may know which way to go, but even better than that, I know 50 ways not to go.
Right? No, I like it. So it's a collaborative effort where you're there. It's a creation process. Yeah. My podcast that dropped last week, I interviewed a senior vice president of a big company. And I love what she said. She said, I assume my teammates have better ideas than I do, the people on my team. Yeah. So I'm hearing that same kind of thought process. I have a lot of ideas. I know what to do and what not to do, but I want you to come up, and then together we're creating this. And then once it's created, are you helping them execute it? What happens then?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm really like an iterative person. Like, we're going to create a little and execute a little and create a little and execute a little, because we learn so much from executing, and we can act faster, and things are changing so fast in our world right now, right? Like, what was true today isn't always true tomorrow. So I love, and that so many clients come to me because they're ready to grow or they're about to grow. And usually in order to actually grow, you need a little extra capacity. Like, you need more than just me to tell you what to do or help you figure out what to do. You need a little doing done for you to help you get to that place where you could then hire someone, to do an additional job. Often that looks like kind of building out a C-suite team over time. So I'll come in and say, I'll actually help write some of this marketing copy for you, or we're going to sit down together and we're actually going to build out a process for something. So I just had a great time the other week helping a client who does domestic violence kind of redesign their core program so that they could serve more people. And excuse me. So we actually just sat down and mapped out, how exactly is this process going to go ideally? And then we have to make the plan. Okay, how do you get from where you are now to your ideal version of the program?
Okay, good. So what I'm hearing is you're kind of with them every step of the way. And as you said, the wizard behind the curtain, they're out there doing what they have to do. Hello, it's Michele Phillips interrupting this podcast to talk about my brand new book, Energize Your Happiness. Tap into your personal energy and shape your destiny. I have spent 25 years researching, testing, and working with high performers. And most people think that happiness is something you earn after you succeed. I am here to tell you that we have it backwards. Happiness is a habit, and it is the fuel for everything that comes next. When I learn something and it helps me in my life, I want to share it with you. I want you to have more fulfillment. I want you to have more energy. And in Energize Your Happiness, I teach you how to manage your energy, not just your time, so you can lead yourself with clarity. You can regulate your emotions and stop running on empty. This isn't about positive thinking. It's not about pretending that life is easy. It is a practical, science-based approach that blends neuroscience, habits, and intentional mindset shifts that help you move out of stress into flow and right outcomes you actually want to live. When you learn how to apply the things that I talk about in this book, you don't just feel better, you make better decisions, you show up stronger, and you create results that last. So I am so excited about this book. I want to shout it from the rooftops. So right now, if you have not read it, I want you to go to energizeyourhappiness.com and I will send you a personally signed copy. You could go to lulu.com. You could go to amazon.com. And if it's already helped you have a better outlook, feel better, sleep easier, please, I would so appreciate a review if you are called to do this. We are all in this together and I want you to be happy. I want you to feel fulfilled. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this message with you. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get back to the podcast. What's different about your method than traditional kind of nonprofit fundraising and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So the strategic planning piece is hugely different. And then tied directly to how we do strategic planning, we do it's like a version of Scrum or Agile, if anyone folks have heard of that. So I'm teaching.
And give a little background just in case you haven't.
So I'm teaching organizations how to work in 2-week chunks. And I'll just share kind of 2 high-level concepts. One is the concept of Kanban, which these things Scrum and Agile often use. It's about putting things in columns. But the concept of Kanban is make it seen. Mm-hmm. So it's about simplifying how you get a process done by making things kind of more obvious, more seen. And that's a concept I think that can help us in all sorts of areas of business and our life, right? How can we make the issues seen and respond to them sooner? And then some other concepts just from this Scrum space without going into totally what is Scrum is some core philosophies around we should have a more distributed model. Let's get our teams working together as a team to come up with the plan, a piece of the plan. What is the thing we should do next? Decide that, take action for 1 or 2 weeks, and then review. How did that go? Are we done? What did we learn? And then do that iteration process again, and really giving everybody a voice. So there's no longer this top down, we're going to make this big complex project and then assign all these pieces out. And then maybe 6 months or a year later, we've done the project. And then we realize, oh, we forgot about these things. Or this thing we thought would be amazing, nobody cares about, right? It really doesn't work.
Well, it gives everybody a voice, which I love. Yeah. There's a quote that I read years ago, and I always remember it was all about like keeping your message so simple that it's just like this simple mantra that everybody, like you said, like make it seen. So everyone knows it. Everyone knows which way they're pointing. And the quote was, it takes confidence to be simple, because if you're not confident, you're terrified you'll look simple.
Yeah.
So we tend to make things more complex than they really are, and it could be so simple. And the other thing I love that you said about the theory of trying it on, in sales, we used to call it the puppy dog close, right? Take the pup, you're in the pet store, and we used to say, oh, take the puppy home for the weekend. If you don't like the puppy, you can bring it back on Monday. But usually when the people get the puppy home, they fall in love with it, you're trying it on. So if I say to my boss, can I try these new hours next week? Just for a week. Yeah. And then if it doesn't work, we could go back, and then people feel like they have a say, they have a voice, they're part of the process. So the buy-in is huge. And again, I don't have that much background in non-for-profits. So normally you're saying it's like the powers that be, bring down the edict from the mountain and say, here's the vision and here's the marching orders.
Yeah. I mean, they're just
similar in corporations.
It's similar to corporations, right? Nonprofits maybe in general are sometimes behind the times because they've had to struggle with what they call the overhead myth, meaning a lot of pressure has been put on nonprofits to put basically an inappropriate amount of their funding towards their programs directly, which, on the surface sounds like, oh, if 100% of my donation goes directly to the programs, that's a good thing, right? But what would happen to your company or your product or the nonprofit's product, the service, if no one was doing research and development, if nobody was marketing to get the right people into the program, if you had terrible leadership because you just hired the cheapest executive director who's totally burnt out, right?
Well, so you're making me think of the pendulum, because we gave all this money to nonprofits, and then we found their CEOs were, all those news reports broke that they were all living high on the hog and there was no money going to the cause.
Those are the minority of cases.
But then did it swing too far to the overhead myth where now we're afraid to, we want to put all the money back into the program?
That's right. And just to kind of say those, because I know those stories come out so loud, but I just want to set the record straight for everybody. Please. The nonprofit industry is a highly regulated industry. And in fact, any of us can go see the full tax return, including the salary of the top executives for any nonprofit. They are all public record.
And would that be something you could Google, or where would that be?
You can Google it. ProPublica runs the database. Of course, the IRS has a database. There's another tool called Candid. There's like a bunch of ways to look up and see the full tax returns. Right? Imagine if your your business tax returns, and everybody could see exactly like your basic breakdown of income and expenses for the year. Like it's all on there. So
thank you for clarifying that. Yeah.
Most nonprofits are not real. They are quite transparent. Yeah. And then in addition to that, they have, a lot of rules that they have to follow within states, and even states that they're not incorporated in, just to be able to fundraise in other states.
So are they all, this is a question I guess I'm asking personally for you. Does it matter what kind of nonprofit it is? Do you is there certain ones that are causes that are near and dear to your heart that you like working with more than others? Not that the others are wrong. They're just, we all have our own favorites. How does that work for you?
I'm a lover of people. So any nonprofits that are there helping people, which actually ends up including many animal rescue organizations. Two of my clients right now, or one is an organization that helps people keep their pets. So people make sure that people aren't having to give up their pets because of financial issues, and that those pets are getting health care. And I also have a humane society, which is, there's a lot of thinking there around, the benefits of pets to people. And so I love, a very strong background in mental health and developmental disability organizations that serve youth, or involved in education, service-based organizations, which is many of them. And yeah.
Okay, excellent. No, I would just think, because it's so funny. I always tease when I started my business, I pictured myself working in like these glamorous, fashion companies. And I work in a lot of factories, and I work with a lot of animal health also.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's all good. So I just, I guess the question came to my mind.
Yeah. And you gain like expertise in like various industries, from working with mental health organizations. I know have a little bit of expertise in like how Medicaid managed care works and how the billing cycles work, right? Because there's things to know about. And actually kind of related to that, my other little PSA is many people may have heard this past year that nonprofits had a lot of federal funding cut. But what most people are not aware of is most of those federal grants are what are called reimbursement grants. So the nonprofit receives the grant as a contract, but they have to spend the money first. And then they they have to save all the, receipts and documentation. They send it in and get reimbursed. So when the federal government cut those grants, they were committed contracts, and many of those nonprofits had the cash. They'd already put the money out, and now they're not going to get it reimbursed. Yeah. So that really this year hurt. I always encourage nonprofits not to be dependent on any kind of grant funding. But, if you love a nonprofit out there who's reaching out extra because they lost grant funding, it's more than just that they lost future revenue.
They already spent
the money, and they trusted the federal government to, keep the contract that they were contracted for.
Yeah, I have a nonprofit that has been reaching out to. In fact, I'm going to write it down because I have to get back to them.
Yeah. So do please, heed their calls this year. That's a really difficult position, an unfair position to be in.
Thank you for this education. Is there any, and because I don't know that, I don't know that all like as deeply as you do. Is there anything else you think you want people to know about nonprofits that, rumors, whatever, stereotypes?
Well, one of the things I've been having a fun time talking about with for-profit entrepreneurs recently is that there are so many great ways to partner if you run a business with a nonprofit. And one of those things is you can partner with a nonprofit when you're doing a launch of some sort to, say part of, just like you'd have bonuses in your packages, right? You can have a portion of, the proceeds are going to go to a nonprofit.
Got it. Yeah.
But the warning is don't pick like the Starbucks of nonprofits. Pick a nonprofit for whom your gift is going to be a significant gift for them, and partner with them more closely. And don't just do it one time. Continue that relationship with your community, because it will make, that nonprofit is going to be very good probably at giving impact updates and updates to your community, right? Let that be a true partnership. It's going to increase stickiness for your community, how loyal people feel to you, and it's going to really impact probably a great nonprofit if you choose well. And I'm happy to talk to people out there like, how do we choose well? So that's one thing.
You're making me hold you. So I want to share a really fun story about somebody else, another entrepreneur, but that does exactly what you said. So one of my dear friends and colleagues runs a real estate brokerage firm in Rockland County, Kenyatta Jones area. I'll give you a shout out. She's also an author, but what she did was many years ago, at least over 10 years ago, she decided to give 3% of her commission in the county to a charity of your choice, but it had to be a charity in the county. Yeah. So whatever the 3% was. And then I think a year or two ago, she was the Women of the Year for something. I can't remember what, 'cause she's gotten so many awards. And I went to the event. And when the man stood up, the head of the nonprofit, he said, we started getting these odd number checks from Kenyatta. $103, $250. So they were getting these. So people think, oh, it's not, I don't know what the numbers were, but people think, oh, it's not enough because it's not this big. But he said over 10 years, this amounts to, and he gave the number. I can't remember again, so I'm not doing it justice, but you get the point of the story.
Yeah.
These little tiny donations that she partnered with any nonprofit in the county added up. For this was one specific nonprofit. So what you're saying is so true, and you're really hitting that, making a point there. So I really wanted to share that story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love that. Yeah. So do partner, and partner maybe more closely than you would have imagined. And then kind of on the flip side of that, I was just at an event for entrepreneurs about how to build like stronger supportive relationships. And this is an area that nonprofit industry knows like deeply, intimately, like how to build relationships, because it's what great fundraising is built on. It's building lifelong supporters who want to, commit to supporting your cause and building those relationships. So there's a lot that for-profits could be learning from nonprofits about how to develop really meaningful relationships.
Oh, can you give us an example? I love where you're going with this.
Yeah. So for example, what in the nonprofit space, we have a number of ways of describing building relationships with donors. One of them is literally called moves management, if you want something to Google. And it's like a systematized way, like you plan out like how many touch points are you going to have? And it's known that to build a relationship with someone who's going to give a significant donation takes 12 to 24 months and many, many, many touches. Yeah. So they have all this granular information about how do you have a coffee with somebody, get to know them, ask questions about them, right? Waiting before you make an ask of them, looking for alignment, right? There's all this like very granular instruction and knowledge about,
and it's called moves, MOVES.
Moves management. Yeah.
I love
there
it.
are other ways of describing the same thing, but that's one kind of known program, if you will, for, structuring, developing relationships. Another example of a tool that the nonprofit space uses I just realized, I'm like, why don't we all use this, is nonprofits use wealth screening tools. So there are literally tools available to them based on public information where they can input their list of contacts and find out who has how much capacity to give, based on their network.
Organizations, meaning, or
across within. So they might take their whole list of contacts, right, of donors and potential donors, and they can run that through a tool and find out, oh, here are my people of like multi-million-dollar net worth who have the capacity to give, $1 million or more. Here are my people who have the capacity to give in the hundreds of thousands, the 50s of thousands,
And then your marketing can be more targeted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've never actually heard of a for-profit using those tools, but they're available to anybody who wants to pay to use them.
And what did you call that? It was called wealth screening.
They call them a wealth screening tool. There are various companies who do it, but that's the type of tool.
And I love what you're saying too about profits learning from the nonprofits versus the other way around. It kind of changes the perspective, and why not? So
we tend to get that ego-y thing, like, oh, we're going to help the nonprofits who don't know. I got another piece of news for folks out there, which is, as businesses, nonprofits are more complex than for-profit. So I work with for-profit organizations too sometimes. I don't promote it as much. But I got to tell you, we're helping a for-profit business is so easy compared.
So what's the difference? Can you,
so like a for-profit business probably has like an owner or a founder, or they've gone corporate, and then they have a board and a CEO. But many businesses out there have the owner founder and then they have maybe one product or multiple products, right? And they sell their product for a value for money. And so you better product, more money, it's simple exchange. And that's basically it. You might add more products or offers or brands, but That's basically your model. Every nonprofit starts with a board of directors, a minimum of 3 people. A CEO or executive director who is not allowed to be an owner and could get fired by the board at any time, even if they're the founder. And they are starting a minimum of 2 businesses at the same time. So they're building a fundraising business, which in nonprofits we call development work. And then they're building whatever service, the impact they're trying to make in the world. And those are going to have radically different audiences who are doing things for radically different reasons, right? So like, let's say you are a domestic violence organization, right? Your target service is going to be helping victims of domestic violence, maybe in a certain area, probably looking at, a large percentage of women, because that happens to be how the cookie crumbles. You're going to be dealing with things like law enforcement and legal injunctions and trauma, all that stuff and all sorts of complicated things around, when people are in a domestic violence situation, it can be hard for them to have an opportunity to reach out for help. Sometimes you have to help them cover their tracks that they even reached out for help. And then on the other side, you have a business towards donors, people who are not at risk, people who care about the cause, people who are maybe wealthy individuals. And what you're selling is this really positive emotional experience of being able to say, I helped make that happen, right? I helped make a difference in the world.
So it's like you're running 2 separate tracks.
2 audiences, 2 sets of messages, 2 sets of lists, possible CRM complications. You can't just have one CRM in a case like that because you have like HIPAA protected information, but still the families of the people you serve might also be potential donors. So you don't want to lose all the information either. So it becomes quite complex. And it's
I hope anyone listening, I hope you're helping a nonprofit out there somehow, some way, either with your time or your money or, partnering. If you're not, please, think about, the things that you love in life and the things that are important to you and, join up. How do you keep yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally fit? And, do you have any habits or rituals that keep you positive and moving forward?
Absolutely. So I have a rather intense hobby. I race sailboats for fun. And that is an activity that has always really fulfilled me in so many ways, both as an exercise and doing something hard and scary, in team building and being outside and staying physically fit. Like it ticks all these boxes, building friendships. So that's one of the ways.
And you do that in the winter because you're in New York. So that's one.
Yeah. So I'm starting to do it in the winter, a little traveling around and actually what they call frostbiting when you go sailing in the winter, in the cold. And, but I have, just daily practices. I only work 16 hours a week typically because I think it's really important. I have to be there for my family, for my house. And so, my son, who's now 12, he is wonderful, bright kid, but he's on the spectrum, has ADHD, dyslexia, and dysgraphia. So there's a lot going on there to support.
I have another podcast for you from that.
Okay, good. Right now, I've always had a morning routine. Right now, I take a walk with my dog down to this beautiful place, and I usually do some sort of either guided meditation or quiet meditation. And then I just like to put on some music that just really fills me with joy. And I just do a little dance outside for me and the dog and just feel myself spreading out into the world and feeling myself holding more energy. And it changes whatever that routine is, but having a routine that, I think for mind and body is really, really been key.
I'm very impressed with how you've, curated your schedule, knowing your limits, what you have time for, because a lot of people just they give till exhaustion, especially moms. So to see a mom that is saying, here's what I have here. I need time for my son. He's got special needs and I need time for work. Sailing, fabulous. We rented a sailboat. Actually, we're going to Tortola in February, March, but we hired a captain. So
nice. Good idea.
I took sailing lessons for a hot minute and I wasn't, I spent too much time talking and not enough time paying attention to the wind. But it's been wonderful to talk to you. You really opened my eyes on some things about nonprofits that I didn't know, and really some things we could do. So I created the word Energizio. I made it up for my new book, and it's energy in action, because it's one thing to have a lot of energy, but if it's misplaced, it's wasted. And, so focused action. Where can people find you? I mean, let me ask this question first. I'm getting ahead of myself. Are there any final words of wisdom you want people to know about?
Oh my goodness. I feel like we shared so much, but I will just say in taking care of yourself, because people always go to me, they look at me like, Sarah, you do all these things, but I rest. I rest a lot. And I really just believe in, like, if you're feeling at all tired or burnt out, like, take a rest. And that probably means more than like a couple hours. Like it probably means like a couple days, maybe even a whole week, right? But just keep resting until you feel rested. Like, don't stop resting until you really.
I don't know when rest got a bad rap, because we all need it, and we feel like we're lazy. But we're not lazy. We're re-energizing. We're refreshing. So it's all the perspective.
That's right. You always get it back tenfold, right? So, just think if you're like, oh man, I need a third day or a fourth day, or it feels like I should be better already, but I'm not. 4 days, you're going to get 40 days back. Like, so do not worry.
Yes.
Rest for 5, you'll get 50 days back, right? Just
it's flipping the way people think of it in their mind. It's not wasted time. It's invested time.
It's invested time. And I just fully believe it always has at least a 10x return.
Yeah. I've lived a very balanced life my whole life. And even as my own boss, sometimes it gets too busy and I'm like, Michele, you need to stop.
Yeah.
Get away, walk outside, whatever, take day off, and I always like that light at the end of the tunnel. Like if I'm traveling or working too much, it's like, I know there's a couple days where I can just go,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
Really good. Thank you. Where can people find you?
So you can find me if you're in the nonprofit space. I have a podcast and newsletter at inspirednonprofitleadership.com. You can find my work around the impact method at pivotground.com. And my newest work is starting to appear at saraholivieri.com. So you can follow along there for what is next to come.
Okay. And I will be putting all this in the show notes. And I'll go out to my newsletter, and it will be on all my social media channels. So thank you for teaching us about nonprofits and balance in our life and focus. Thank you, Sarah, for being here. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And that is a wrap for today's episode of Write Your Outcome. That's a wrap for today's episode of Write Your Outcome with me, Michele Phillips. If something sparked in you and you enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to rate, review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Let's keep these ripples going and make it a